Joy cometh in the morning. Destiny can only be delayed, or cannot be denied. Don't give up in your struggle. Chop, 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 chop. Sing it out. Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Never lose hope. Your blessings are on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way. Oh, your miracle is on the way. Yeah, it's on the way.
No matter your condition, no matter your challenges,
never give up.
No matter your situation, No matter the calamity,
Never give up.
He's the God of the last minute miracle.
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 Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Never lose hope. Your blessings are on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way. Oh, it's
Chop, 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 chop.
I see him doing everything.
No matter your suffering, no matter the trouble, no matter your sickness, no matter the emptiness, He's the God of signs and wonders. He's the God of signs and wonders. Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Never lose hope. Your blessings are on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
He's the God of signs and wonders.
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 He's the God of signs and wonders. He's the God of signs and wonders. Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way.
Don't give up. Your miracle is on the way. Oh, my sister, never
lose hope.
give up. Give up.
Biafra Hausa, Africa.
From the award-winning producer, Shaking and Cool Beats.
Biafra's Gold Talent exclusive.
Votu nini turatu kembu wa bidoro. Ife nini turatu wakene mofife tutara. Ayetusia votu naba ohe bureka ilaria. Ife kanebe o kakwa nebe o. Votu nini turatu kembu wa bidoro. Iye nini turatu wakene mofife tutaro. Ofinyi tutaro wako ofinyi tutaro. Iye kanebe kakwa nebe o. Iye kanebe o kakwa nebe. kanepe o, kakwanepe o. Iye kanepe o, kakwanepe o. Iye kanepe o, kakwanepe o. IPOB, one family. IPOB. Nalani Biafra, I say I no election, no. After election, hey, put their deception, no. Upon deception, I say no police. Nalani Biafra, I say I no election, no. After election, hey, put their deception, no. Upon deception, I say no police. Nalani Biafra, I say I no election, no. After election, hey, put their deception, no. Upon deception, I say no police. Nalani Biafra, I say I no election, no. After election, hey, put their deception, no. Upon deception, I say no police. Upon deception, I say no recession. Baby, I need to see no vote. And to suppose so election no vote. Yameranya take him out. One election, Punaya, no so fuego. Kedi Yagame, when we tell the Aparajo, if I am to Papino, you want to go Mundemo. I did when no. Sokoto, ifunu na chona sokoto munne munoti na shokoto. Chukwu abia magozela ye na odi obuna umunne mo. Ulekwela nule ka ye musi anike.
Iya koko ana mahola ntimo. Atuma tuba tunala dikwebu. Tubo sabo chibo. Ebe nile ahoni zikwebu.
Iye kanebe o, akwanebe. Iye kanebe o, akwanebe. Asimi iye kanebe o, akwanebe. Enimi iye kanebe o, akwanebe.
Biafrans, Biafrans,
che alụmdị ọchịchị a na-akpa n'obodo a onye atụsịna votu gbakọ onwe gị ọnụ anyị ọ ga-anọ na mmiri n'ụwa ka nchabasị anyị anya ebe elu ma ebe anyị nọ ka anyị nụ winin referendum
abịa makoro okwu site n'ọnụ Nnamdi Kanu ọ dịghị elekshọn ka a ga-eme
ihe nke na-ebe kakwa na-ebe ihe ka 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 na-ebe kakwa na-ebe IPOB one family IPOB Nalani Biafra, I say I no election, no. After election, hey, who did their deception, no. Upon deception, I say no recession, no. Baby, I need to see no vote, no. And to suppose, so election, no vote, the American take him out. One election, I ain't no joke with you. Kedia game, when we take their paradio. If I am a tupamino, you want to go, woman, adile kwenu nwenwenne o n'ime Sokoto ife unu na-achọ na Sokoto ụmụnne m na ọdị na Sokoto Chukwu abịa ma gọzila anyị na ụdị ọbụna ụmụnne m ulekwelekwela mere ka anyị nwụsịa n'ike
Africa. I know you won't be disputing that one. Right, so, Brother Justice, if you could introduce yourself and then you introduce the organization of what that you represent there.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a great honor to be in this studio. Thank our brother Bami and brother Cecil for this invitation. My name is Justice Rukachilois. I'm UK, United Kingdom National Coordinator for the indigenous people of Biafra. Now, as Kwame said, Biafra is in Africa. Without getting too controversial, if you look in the ancient maps, even as far back in 1600s, you see the word or the area designated Biafra. So there's no argument about where Biafra is. Now, most of us understand it's also in Nigeria currently, and that's probably
in fact that big sea area of Nigeria is actually called the Gulf of Biafra, isn't it? Long before Nigeria became a state of
absolutely,
any kind.
Absolutely. So there's a bite of Biafra, long before Nigeria became known as a country, and that's so. If it existed in the 1600s and Nigeria got its independence in 1960, so Biafra obviously existed before, but and the issue now is whether it's inside Nigeria or is Nigeria inside Biafra. But we're going to go into that. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity and privilege to share what little knowledge I have on this huge nebulous topic. But if the process or the actual outcome is to help everybody understand the situation on the ground, and also to help us as Africans to stop further bloodshed in that part of the world, we'll all be grateful. Thank you.
Okay, so give a brief history of the organization represent.
Yes, IPOB, Indigenous People of Biafra, is an organization which is like a movement in the sense that it's in over 88 countries in the world. And this is occasioned because of the fact that most people who were indigenous to Biafra, which is part of the Nigeria, let's say for geographic location, have found themselves scattered all over the world. So you have people within the area of their indigen, which is Biafra within Nigeria and also the rest of the African continent. And there's a saying that where you don't find an Biafran, then that place is not safe. So we are really everywhere. So it's an organization which is like an umbrella group, which try to unite them all to fight a common cause, which by implication, if we stabilize this part of Africa, the whole thing will spread to the rest of Africa. So we are in several countries. I happen to be one of the coordinators in the United Kingdom. So if you go to Germany, you find IPOB. If you go to France, you find IPOB, Ireland, and so on and so forth. But of course, the majority of people live in Biafra land itself. And this is what we're going to explore a bit further. Thank you.
And the common cause is, what's the aim of the organization?
Right. The aim is to have a peaceful restoration of a country we call Biafra, which, as I said earlier, existed way in the ancient days. And if we can restore it, then in a peaceful manner, because we've been through war, which I suppose we can talk about later, there's no need killing each other again to establish what you already have. So this particular organization is going for a peaceful agitation for the restoration of their sovereignty, which is Biafra.
And that means succeeding from Nigeria.
Yeah, people call it seceding. Yeah, people call it seceding. When you use the word secede, it means you're going to, literally price yourself away. But in 1967, when the first word was used to say Biafra, part of Nigeria, was seceding, it was with the understanding that you're a part of a country and you're forcing to go away from it. But if you have been pushed out from one part of the country and you return to your village, you can't say you seceded from your other party. From the way the world will look at it, as though you're pulling away. But the Biafran experience was that they were in other parts of Nigeria and they were pushed out of that. So nowhere else was safe until they got back to their own fatherland, as it were. And because of the rejection and all the efforts to have peace failed, they declared themselves as a separate part of the country, hoping that in so doing, they'll be left alone and no further bloodshed. Unknown to them, that declaration was a signal for Nigeria to say, well, we have this territorial integrity, you can't go out. So they killed them to kick them out, they killed them to bring them back in, and the killing is still going on. So the IPOB is trying to bring an end to all this killing.
Okay. Right. If you could give us a brief history, just may I assist briefly?
Yes.
You speak of the indigenous people of Biafra.
Yes.
Everybody knows that, in a way, it's Igbo land. So who else is there?
Okay. When we look at the whole map of, if you like, Nigeria, there's a section called Igbo land. The issues like, what's the best way to, you don't really know where the boundary is, because it's the
social media connectivity, WhatsApp, Instagram, all the rest, even Facebook. So I cannot broadcast under the circumstances because some things I want to bring out, I couldn't do it. So that is it. So I salute each and every one of us, Biafrans. If you're hearing my voice, we make sure we continue. This is a struggle, it's a war. This is the reason why we must be technologically up to date as Biafrans. Nigeria has been holding us down, honestly speaking. If not that we are in a quagmire called Nigeria, we will develop by now. I think I will be even sending satellite to the space, honestly speaking. You know, when we say it, when we speak it, people don't understand. We are not like any other race in Africa, honestly. When you look at when you hear how our leader is lambasting us, even to all of us lambasting ourselves, we are not doing it out of hatred. We are doing it out of love. My goodness me. How can a great race, great people like us, like Biafrans, we are relegated to the background, trading? You know, each day sometimes you feel bad. That is why when we come here on air, we have to do anyhow in order to raise our people from slumber, because we have been in slumber. Had it been we had Biafra restored since 1970, by now we'll be competing with Japan, South Korea, before God and man. My father used to cry this. He's alive. He used to say, he used to tell me, he used to tell us, on our Sudan, we are being weighed down by this yoke we call Nigeria. But the issue is this: these people, the few 0.001% of our people that are lording it over us, being used by the Fulani Caliphate because of their personal interests, they are blind to this our catastrophic situation. Honestly, we are a peculiar people. We are a peculiar race. Forget about whatever that is happening to us. You can go any other place in Africa, you cannot see people like us, peculiar, talented like us. We make things happen. But lo and behold, there is no political structure in order to offload what God has given to us. That is why we continue scavenging. We are scavengers all over the world. Even in Nigeria, we are scavengers. Always begging to get to what we want. Always begging. Behold the kings, queens, prince and princesses begging, being subdued. Sometimes it makes me cry. It makes me sometimes run berserk. That is why, we say it as, we preach it this way through the inspiration, because we are mad. We want to go home. We want to get our people liberated, liberate ourselves. We are fighting for our future, not even now, the future generations. That is what all these crooks, they don't want to hear, they don't want to understand it. Because of money, it's a pity. Tomorrow, I will be online. I will be on air by the grace of QPSK. Let us watch and see what is happening in the world, please. Because it's of no use. There is no WhatsApp, even no social media. Some things I prepare, I have to play, you cannot play. Nothing. So that's it. This is the world, honestly. So we must continue. I enjoin each and every one of you, every one of us. Please let us restrain ourselves from listening to gossip. Please. Little minds, they discuss people. Little minds, understand it. Little minds discuss people. If you're a gossiper, know that you are little mind. You have little mind. You're a baby. You are not mature. You understand? Mature, because mature minds discuss principles. They discuss issues, issues that have importance, not people. Issues of importance. Do you understand? So, how will you relegate yourself down to only going about listening to gossip, listening to WhatsApp messages that it doesn't matter? It gives you only listening, going from one message, one voice, somebody in his bed or her bed. Very easy. He or she will put her voice in a WhatsApp. No, this and that. And you have time to listen to all this. That is rubbish. Now that there is no WhatsApp, is crashed for over 1 hour now. What are you gonna do? Do you see the importance of what we are doing? We want to develop so that if there's a case like this, we will switch. Biafra will switch to their plan B option. We are all human beings. These people that do all these things, they have a head. We have a head like them. They have a head like us. The same neurons they have like us. So it's only when governments that fail to develop their human resources in order to keep us down. Now they are keeping Nigeria, everybody down. All we are discussing is cows, cattle. Have you seen something like an abomination like this? They reduce princesses, kings, and queens that should be discussing principles, how to, building spacecrafts to Mars, to Jupiter. They reduce us into discussing cows, cattle. Oh, how cattle is the number one citizen. Oh, how we are going to give life. This is what we discuss in Nigeria every blessed day. And we are down. Oh, we must deliver ourselves. No person can do it for us. It's only us. Please. I will log out from here, please. Please continue listening, because I will switch on to our normal cloud. There one. Remember blessed.
From the award-winning producer, Shaky Man Cool Beats.
Biafra's Ghost Talent exclusive.
Votu nini turatu kembu wa bidoro. Ife nini turatu wakene mofife tutara. Anye tusia votu naba o hebureka ilaria. Ife kanebe o kakwa nebe o. Votu nini turatu kembu wa bidoro. Iye nini turatu wakene mofife tutara. Talo kwa mofife tutara. Iye kanebe kakwa nebe o. Iye nebe o, kakwa nebe. Iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe o. Iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe o. Iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe o. IPOB, one family. IPOB.
Nalani Biafra, I say I no election, no. After election, put their deception, no. Upon deception, I say no recession, no. Baby, I need to see go vote, no. And to suppose,
so election no vote, Yamera take him out. One election, I need not to follow. Kadiya, when we take their paradio, if I am to Pamino, you want to go on the boat. Anile kwenu mwenwene o Nime Sokoto Ifunu na chona Sokoto Munne munoti na Shokoto Chukwu abia magozela ye na odi obuna Umunne mo Ulekwela nuka ye musi anike
Iyo koko na mahola ntimo Atumatu batu na la dikwebu Subo chibo Ebe nile Ani zikwebu
Iye ka nebe o, akwa nebe. Iye ka nebe o, akwa nebe. Asimi iye ka nebe o, akwa nebe. Enimi iye ka nebe o, akwa nebe.
France, France.
Tuhalika nuche alumti otiti anapano buja. Oya to see the vote, that to see the vote to back over John. Ayoga no na mili no waka chabasi ayanya. Lebe no man, leba ye no kaino. We need referendum.
Wabia makuroku sita no nanditano. Odi election kageme na la Biafra. Dikali kosoro ha bawa my election. Ani kama ndela buki.
Imana tigeji ya mabana tabwananya. I took us a fable guy, Banaga, all passes or referendum, Bukwa, Ian Nimaka. One demo, at the vote also.
Break it down.
Hallelujah, one more. Obia Bawala Mumunum. MSC, no one on Nanto. Nkwa, Panchalo, no Nanto, no.
Iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe. Iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe o. Asimi iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe o. Iye ka nebe o, kakwa nebe o.
IPOB, one family.
IPOB.
All their friends are saying, Ayagaya to vote us. Ndia chichi, very, Burega, walk us. All we want is freedom, no referendum, no election. We want freedom in our nation. We want freedom in our nation.
Our politicians are looting our money, taking to London, building their nation, impoverish people, taking the rights of making our own decision. Biafra is a nation, everybody must know all about it. We are full of wisdom and the right to run our nation.
Okay, rolling way, Haja or Bani guide your vote. I just have vote to have a room and Babu Siwe. Okike Kerowa, Ike Kandiro, Pusiani, Biafra, Rocky, Chukoki, Yanaka,
Obiana Bungo, can they watch you? Obiana Baraye, when they will love ya. Obiana Chico, one eye for 4 years. So, he had Kanebe, Kapanebe, Kanebe,
Biafrans believe no election to referendum.
Masaka, Aba Masaka, Onitsha Masaka Walele, Ebonyi Masaka Walele,
Asaba Masaka, Bayasenuku Masaka,
no Biafra, no election.
Asị m agwa ntị ma ntị anụ ebuwe isi ebukọta anya na ntị ọkwa maka adị ama ama.
If you imagine Nigeria as an artificial creation, if you look at African map, it's in boxes, isn't it? So there's an artificial creation. So there's a portion of that artificial creation, which you call the Igbos live here. But they have neighbors like other tribes, like the Efik, like the Ibibio, the Ogojas, and so on. And you keep listing them. It's like if you move from one part of your village and go further down, they speak a slightly different dialect. But the way they see the worldview is similar. They have the same cultural identity and understanding. So it's difficult to price them apart. And the mistake people make, or the British make, is say, but you're Igbo and you want to colonize the next tribe. It's not like that. So there's a definite area through marriage, cultural acclimatization. They're actually one. They see themselves as one. So when Biafra was declared, it was an eastern part of Nigeria, which included not just the Igbos, although the Igbos are the majority. There are other tribes which obviously constituted the then Biafra declaration.
There's some people call it Igoni.
Now, there's a portion of this Biafra, it's also called Ogoni. That's a tribe, which is Ogoni tribe.
So if they wanted autonomy from Biafra, what would be your position on that?
Interesting, because Biafrans, they have in their head it's autonomy. You can't force them to do what they don't want. So every single tribe that makes
let's call them people because
the tribe is very nebulous.
They're not just nebulous, it's a kind of negative European notion.
Indeed. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So every group of people that constitute that geographic space, if they want to have their own autonomy, that's welcome. There's no the thing is, autonomy is because we are being suppressed majority of the times due to people being marginalized or discriminated against. They want their own autonomy. But all these communities actually are fractionated. Even in the Igbo land, they have different communities which are fractionated. And that is what makes it difficult to appreciate the Igbo. They have this concept that the Igbo don't have a king or Igbo something like that, which means they don't have one person central and say, I want you to do this. So because each community has its autonomy, so it's inbuilt in their system. And as a result of that inbuilt autonomy, if there's an issue, a village will nominate someone to go and talk on their behalf. And after that discussion, that ends there. You don't carry on representing them. So when the British arrived, they found it very difficult to deal with because they want to talk to who's in charge. There's no one who is in charge. And that's a different concept for everywhere else they've been to. But other parts of Nigeria, they do have something like a ruler, an emir, and they can talk to them who then filtered information down. In the Biafran setting, you don't have this overall ruler. So every village is autonomous. So the Goni people would be autonomous. The Efik are autonomous, and so on. And the combination of all this makes what we call United States of Biafra.
Okay. So that's what the juridical entity, the new state.
That's right.
very old, but
Yes.
now new in the international scene.
Indeed.
Would be.
Yes.
It'd be a United States of
Yes.
Biafra, or United Peoples of Biafra.
Absolutely.
All right. We know that there was a civil war in the 60s,
Yes.
and I was around, so I know just how brutal and awful it was. I don't know if before your time.
I was in it.
There you go. All right.
As a child, that's arrived.
Right, so you know better than me. All right. So one of the things that I think people have to understand is how that came about, how that actual war between, as it were, the northern part of Nigeria and the western part of Nigeria fighting together to keep the eastern part of Nigeria in a state then called Nigeria, actually still called Nigeria. So how did that come about?
Okay, before you go to that, what I wanted is to give a brief history of the area today known as Nigeria. Like who was the people in there before and what contribution did they make towards human development?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a much nebulous. Fine. So the geographical space, I'm glad you used the term, geographical space called Nigeria, came about by, slowly accumulating territories by the British government. What happened was that when the scramble for Africa, but basically we all know about slave trade. When that ended, when they got enough, I'm coming to it. Because the slavery occurred, then they stopped taking human capital out of Africa. Now they come back into the African, so they had to now, because they used to collect human slaves at the coast. They couldn't go inside because they don't know quite what's going on. So people used to be brought to them at the coast. So when slavery ended, they now have to find a way of getting more resources. So this is the beginning of colonization. Now, all those countries were not, there's no hard fixed boundary, which you could say, this country, I want to now come and colonize you. So they did it by stealth, gradually trading. So the French were coming, the British were coming, so they were actually fighting among each other. And the European being Europeans, they came they went to Germany and sat on a table and carved up Africa like a turkey. So the reason why Nigeria
or fish.
Fish. So they had a dinner. They had a dinner party. So they said, all right, you want the leg bit? I'm sticking to my chicken. You want the leg bit? Okay, we give you the leg bit. I'll take the arm. I'll take the chest or whatever. You understand? So to stop the Europeans fighting among each other. So when it came to Nigeria, the French were coming from the north and from the west. And then the British sneaked in from the coast and went up to confront the West and to confront the French. So there was, therefore, a deliberate ploy by the British. They started trading at the coast and they gradually moved up to the north. So unknown to them, there was in the north what we call an established empire, which is Islamic. And they were coming down to the south coast. They were coming down to move Islam all the way down to the southern coast. And if you like, in West Africa, it's that eastern part, which became Biafra, that hasn't been Islamized. So there was an intention to bring Islam down south coast. So the British met it.
And much of the West wasn't Islamized either, the Yoruba people.
Indeed, they were half and half. So they met this, the British met this intended conquest, if you like, head on, to stop them coming down and taking more slaves. There was a fight to stop that. So the British, under a soldier, a colonial soldier called Lugard, sent his military to try and conquer the all-conquering Islamic forces. They were very, very upset with that because they thought if the British wasn't there, they would have conquered the whole country. So we have to bear that in mind. But the British conquered the north because the north was conquered by the Fulani, a tribe called Fulani. I'm going to quickly introduce them. A people called Fulani who took on the indigenous people called the Hausas in the northern part of Nigeria. And they subdued them. and also sent what they call the emirs. Each town the area they conquered, they had a Fulani person ruling it.
A kind of a big chief.
Indeed. So they call it emirs.
Yeah.
Now, those emirs confronted the British, and British conquered them because the people the emirs conquered, the houses, they didn't like to be conquered by the Fulanese. So it was easier for the British to conquer the Fulanese, if you imagine what's going on. So the British conquest of the Fulanese was easier than they would have admitted if the whole of the North was behind and fighting the British. So the British said we had the Maxim, the machine guns. So it was easier for them because you have this. Anyway, so they conquered the northern Nigeria where the Fulanese were predominant in ruling. And then the Fulani played, so right, okay, you conquered us, we understand. In fact, Lugard himself said, by the same authority you used to subdue the houses, we're using it to subdue you. So, but what they did was to allow them to carry on ruling that part.
Indirect rule in the book.
So that's it's a very, very strange thing. You conquer them and say, but you can carry on ruling as you have been ruling, but we are in charge now.
It suited the British very well.
It suited them because they didn't have the manpower to administer the whole area. They used the indigenous people who are ruling it to maintain that. So that is up in the north. That's was a huge geographical area. But when it came to the south, it was a slightly different scenario.
First happened before that.
It happened before that because in order to get to the north, you have to come from the south. So they bombarded a place like Lagos with a naval gunship, and those ones just caved in because they can't really fight naval gunship. The British had a mighty navy. They conquered the east as well, and they merged east with the west. So they now and called it Southern Nigeria or Protectorate. I don't know who they protected. So they call it Southern Protectorate. And the Southern Protectorate were merged as a result of Lagos, the west and the east. Remember, the capital was originally in Calabar, which is in the east. And I'm sure my brothers in West Indies know about Calabar School
we
and so
have
on.
a college in Jamaica by that name.
Calabar. So it's actually indigenous to that part. So therefore, you had the southern part with Protectorate, then merged with the northern part which has been conquered, which became the Nigeria. So you have the Southern Protectorate merged with the Northern Protectorate in 1914. This when all this happened.
Let's get back to that. I think that my brother Kwame was asking something else. Before all of that, the area that we call Nigeria has a culture, and it's very impressive. It's the first place outside of Egypt. It's the first place that excited me because it has Benin and Ife and Igbo Ukro and all of that wonderful and Nok and all of that. I think when he said, what is his contribution to human culture? That perhaps is what he was asking you to talk about. So it's
phenomenal contribution. Phenomenal contribution. I suppose the Benin culture, for example, if you go to the bronze, they are really masters of it. And what the British did before they merged into Southern Protectorate, the Benin culture had their own military. They resisted the British invasion force.
400 years.
And then British then sent an expedition force to totally wipe them out.
1896 or 97.
Indeed. And as a result of complete destruction of the Benin Kingdom, they grabbed all the artifact and brought it to the British. In fact, I think 2 days ago I read somewhere saying, we want our statues back.
The Nigerians have been asking for that for the longest while. They offer to loan it. They say dangerous to hand it back. You don't have sufficient the right condition there to protect it. All kind of arguments. They say we didn't really steal it. It was legitimate.
We captured it. We found it. So it's the same thing as the Greek marble.
Absolutely.
So the culture, when you look at them, the intricacy of it is phenomenal. I personally saw an exhibition many years ago when I was at university, when they came to London, of the artwork. And we mentioned Benin. We also, when they come to the eastern part, they also had this amazing, delicate exhibition, the pot with the weave, right? They also had that you can really appreciate the advance in their culture. Then in the north, they also had their own Islamic way of doing things. So the Nook culture was also, we're talking centuries ago. But
it's actually more than centuries.
Yes.
The
ancient times.
The foundation culture, the earliest thing that the archaeologists talk about is the Nok culture, and it's now agreed that you can date it back to about 1000 BC.
Absolutely.
So we're not talking about centuries, we're actually talking about millennia, we're talking about 3 millennia of a continuous culture that has connection.
That's right.
In artistic material that uses bronze, that uses ivory, that uses wood, which doesn't last very long, and that also uses baked pottery, which does last very long if it's not in wet conditions. So we actually have, because all of this stuff is preserved, evidence of the quality of that cultural connection and reality that does in fact go back 3,000 years.
And you also have pyramids built in a place like Udi in the eastern part. There are pyramids which most people don't know about. So to talk about what have they contributed, it's not just in that culture. Their music, their artwork, and of course the history. You only need to listen to some of their languages. Some of us have certificates put in the drawer, but those people, their wisdom in their idioms will make you understand they were really advanced cultures.
And speaking of language, one of the fascinating things is that the Hausa, who the Igbos may not particularly like, I don't know, but the Hausa have this wonderfully, I'm sure it's not actually more intricate than anybody else's, but the Western linguists regard it as a phenomenally complicated and impressive language. There's a reservoir of all kinds of cultural stuff. And they've suddenly decided that it's not really an African language at all. Because every time something of cultural that they recognize as of cultural significance is found in Africa, it cannot be African. So I think on this program we were saying a few weeks ago, so the Hausa language, because of its riches, is not African. The Ife bronzes, which were rediscovered in the early 20th century. The first one in 1910, and then a whole set of them in Ife, in the Olokon Grove, as you probably know, in the 1920s. Once that stuff was discovered, clearly, artistically, it's on a match with ancient Egypt and with ancient Greece. They don't talk about ancient Egypt. They say that the Greeks must have come across the Mediterranean, come across the Sahara, come another 1,000 miles down across the grassland and the forest, and taught these Africans how to do this stuff. Even though, in point of fact, Greece's flowering is 500 or 600 BC, and we now know that the Nok stuff is at least 500 years older, and probably even older than that. So it makes no sense at all. And they do the same thing with Great Zimbabwe. Great Zimbabwe is this phenomenal monument, probably 13th century, and they get there, they see it, and it cannot be African. So I have a little book. The title of it is The Arab Builders of Great Zimbabwe, and they have these people in Arab dress who they're saying went all the way down the Indian Ocean, and then far up into Africa is Great Zimbabwe. It's at least 1,500 miles, probably 2,000 miles. Africa is vast, and they say that people left from wherever in the Arab world they came from. Leave aside the fact that the Arabs are actually mostly black people, but leave that aside and come down, get up in the middle of Africa and build these things. And the problem with that one, there's so many problems with it, is that although Great Zimbabwe is the biggest of these stone cities, in fact, the Mashonaland, which is effectively where they are, that includes part of Zimbabwe and part of Mozambique, is full of stone cities, as I think I was saying on this program a few weeks ago. So that's what we find. they cut off the north of Africa and say that's not Africa. And then even when in the now Africa south of the Sahara, sub-Saharan Africa, put it sub, it must be inferior. And then you find stuff there. How do you explain that these people were supposed to be primitive, non-creative, have done stuff? So the explanation is that they really didn't do it. The Portuguese helped the Benin to make their, their bronzes, or the Greeks helped their predecessors to the people of Ife to make their bronzes, or they don't bother to know that those people were part of a tradition that stretched back before Greece. Leave aside the Egyptian connection or the Ethiopian connection. Yeah,
absolutely, because the Herodotus, who's known as a Greek historian,
he was indeed.
If he's the father of history, he wrote about Africa.
Yes.
You can be a father of history writing about history that's already been made.
Yes.
So everything African, like the building of pyramids, all the advanced technology, they always try to find it impossible to attribute it or to ascribe it to black people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
So the civilization is for them to see and acknowledge they actually belong to black people.
Yes.
And they try everything to denigrate. I think it was Napoleon who chopped up the nose of the Sphinx.
Yes.
Because he couldn't believe.
Then he shot it off.
So that for him, it can't possibly be black nose. You know, it can't. So to answer your question, civilization in Africa, wherever you look, you find there were more pyramids, weren't they, in Sudan?
Yes, absolutely.
Than
in Egypt. Absolutely.
So people don't say that.
Yeah.
So the black people, they were, if from point of view of contribution to civilization, they're highly advanced. And the Renaissance they talk about
we
in France.
We invented human culture first, and then human civilization. Everything that they call civilization. Literature, music, the arts, medicine, scientific technology, and so on. All of that starts in Africa.
So what they did was to conquer Egypt and burn all the books that will support. But the hieroglyphics, all the writing is still there for them to see.
Let's just look briefly at that burning process before. Right. So, and it's legitimate, because what we're really talking about is African contribution to world civilization, and we're focusing on Nigeria, but it connects the whole of the continent. So that burning process, it doesn't start with Napoleon. When the Greeks arrive and conquer Egypt, they collect up Egyptian books that are scattered. Scattered is the wrong word, that are located in the temples throughout Egypt. So they scatter them up and they put them in a library in Alexandria. And people talk about this as a Greek library. Nothing Greek about it. Greeks never had any books to put in no library. They've been writing for about 400 years by then, and most of the stuff that they've written was stolen, imitated, whatever from ancient Egypt. So all of this stuff gets collected up in effectively two different entities in Alexandria and so on. And then the Romans arrive and the burning process starts. There's either an accidental or deliberate fire at the time of Mark Antony in that war between him and another Caesar. The stuff the stuff that takes place around
it could be Pompey, Alexander.
Around what the queen did name?
Queen Cleopatra.
Queen Cleopatra, exactly so. And so the burning begins then.
Yes.
And then the Arabs arrive and they do some burning. And before the Arabs, the Christians who don't like this heritage of pagan, because Jesus is not celebrated in it, they burn some of that stuff. And so the burning, the destruction and stealing thing has been going on for at least 1,000 and 1,100 and something years. Horrible stuff.
So there's a lot you can say the contribution. So if it doesn't matter where you go in Africa, when you look hard enough, you find advanced civilization. But the West will say, oh, it must have come from alien culture. It must have come from outside. And that's really where we are.
And on the burning stuff, because in addition to Egypt, Ethiopia, and that northeast Africa being a real residue of African civilization, you also have stuff that develops in the north of Nigeria, in places like Senegal, just to the north of Senegal, Mali, and right, Timbuktu, all of that. They are full of manuscripts. Most of the manuscripts are in Arabic, but not at all exclusively in Arabic. And most of it is still there, or if not most, a whole heap, gigantic amounts of manuscripts that contain all kinds of knowledge is still there. And those people who don't like indigenous African language, even if it's in African knowledge, even if it's in their language, because they're Arabic. So right now, Islamists are busy in Mali, in Timbuktu. The French are trying to stop them. God knows why the French are trying to stop them. And the UN. I see why the UN is trying to stop. But that burning process happening, because, just as in Afghanistan, there's some Islamic barbarians, and they destroy stuff that's non-Islamic because they see it as, well, just not Islamic, and therefore not in praise of Allah. It doesn't matter how old it is. It doesn't matter whether it predates Allah and Islam or not. They set about to destroy it, and a lot of that is happening in the Sahel, just to the south of the Sahara right now. So these processes are alive and still damaging our culture, historical.
And my headache now is those who have been privileged to read a little bit is to make sure our people understand all this.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
The history belongs to history books, but we're going to bring it alive. It's the knowledge we impart to the next generation that's important, to empower them to realize, hang on, what's this about Africans being inferior? That's not right. And that's really the message I want to say. So I don't know if that's
just one last point about that before we return to modern Nigeria. This burning and destruction and denial, this cutting off of the north of Africa, of Egypt, and saying that it wasn't African, wasn't black. That serves a real function, right? Because when the Europeans arrive in India or in China, which they did, or in Japan, or even in Mexico, they see and acknowledge at once that they are in the presence of old, deep culture. You don't want to do that in Africa, but there is evidence of that also in Africa. So what they do is deny the African nature of what they discover there. So when you talk to an Indian or a Chinaman, he knows that I belong to a culture that has all this ancient books and artifacts and so on. When you talk to an African, because of what the Europeans have done to us, we don't know how rich our culture is. We don't know that we're at the head of Africa, of world civilization. We don't know what our ancestors have done. And we believe what they throw at us, that we're nothing and have never done anything, which is history's largest ever lie, right? Just as the enslavement of our people is history's largest monstrosity. The Jews are trying to tell us that the Holocaust is the worst thing that happened in history. Not a thing of so. What happened to us is by far eons more than the Holocaust. This is not to approve the Holocaust in any way or to deny it, but it's small beer in comparison to what happened to us. And yet we, because of the power of the media, because of our own ignorance, because much of this stuff we've been able to know for something like the last 2 centuries. There have been individual black people who are writing this stuff, and it's there in the books, but we don't bother to learn it because we don't get told that it's there. We don't know that's important, and we listen. Our young people listen to all kinds of stuff. I listened to Michael Jackson. You just playing with Michael Jackson, and I didn't understand a word of it. To be absolutely to be absolutely honest, and that's what our young people are listening to, right? And sometimes there's stuff there, but mostly there's next to nothing there. And the places that they could go for real knowledge of us, of our history, of our contribution to humanity, of indeed of our making of humanity, the people of them don't know because they don't have any way of accessing it.
Yeah, so that's partly why, if you have a stable country, and Biafra would be one of those, it will respect these cultures. It will explain to our people, particularly in the diaspora, what has happened. There be accuracy without necessarily banting about, being melodramatic about what's happened to us. There will be events. There'll be lecture, there'll be, if you like, an explanation of who we are. And Biafra, when it was there for 2.5 years, demonstrated
Centuries.
2.5 years.
Oh, in the States.
67,
Yeah, okay,
67 to 70, during its war, it demonstrated its ability to innovate when it was totally impossible to innovate. Some Europeans are around and say, this is the first place we've been to in Africa where the blacks are doing everything. So they were shocked at the amount of what they were able to do. So civilization had been there, but we need to mine it and have stable countries in Africa which would actually show it. So people from abroad would come in and see for themselves. Until we have stable countries, it's going to be difficult to do that.
So return now then to what you were telling us about, which is the making of Nigeria, say, in the 19th and 20th century.
So it was therefore a colonial construct in the sense that you had these indigenous cultures embedded prior to the arrival of the Europeans who were scrambling for mineral resources and had to acquire wealth to run their industries. So Nigeria, therefore, was put together, what we call an agglomeration of divergent cultures. In fact, the person who put them together, Loduga, said water and oil can't mix. They know that the type of cultures that were in their different, if you like, peoples, although they intermarried, they looked after, there was never a war. They were industrialized killing of one tribe or the other. They intermarried, they traded. So all this, but they had a different, distinct identity. Now, so
what
Nigeria,
what did Lugard mean when he talked about water and oil not mixing?
Because he realized from the north, the Muslim way of doing things is different from the. Remember, I said to you, they had somebody who could rule and tell them what to do. Whereas in the south, in the east, they have some stubborn people like myself who, if you want to tell them what to do, you have to call a meeting.
But another part of
when you call a meeting, then people sat down and discussed what you're bringing to them to do, whether it's to the advantage or not. So as a result, there were two different people. The British could tell the North what to do, and they do it straight away. They can try and impose it in the East, and it wouldn't work.
Right. I have a question that arises from something that you said earlier, which I know independently, which is that you also said that the Biafran War in effect started because there had been a process by which Biafrans who were everywhere in what was then Nigeria were killed and pushed back into Nigeria.
Pushed out of Nigeria.
No.
Pushed out of Nigeria, back to the part, and then killed to bring back.
Okay. So I think we're agreeing. I might be saying it differently, but in effect, what I heard you saying, and I know this to be true, that people from eastern Nigeria were living in the north, they were living in the west. That there came a moment when the place in the north of Nigeria
and united water and oil together. So you say to the northern people, we're going to rule you by indirect rule. By indirect rule means you have their own way of running their countries and affairs in place. They say, oh, you're a Muslim, yes, but can we bring Christianity to you? Say, no, you can't. We have a Muslim. How about schools? No, Islamic schools. How about catching up with the modern world? No. We do it at our own pace. Down south happened. I'm answering your question. Why did you have such a problem number?
I'm in agreement with you. I think I understand where you're going.
So down south, Christianity arrived. They say, God sent us. They say, we know God. What's the problem? He sent you. We might actually believe you. God may have sent you. And what is it you can offer us? Oh, okay, schools. So one village will build a school, and the next one say, this thing is good. We better build ours. So there's a competition. To cut a long story short, down south part of Nigeria.
Don't cut that story short. It's very important.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason I'm going that way is that there was an assimilation of the Western ways of doing things. Because after fighting the British and the British conquered them, they said, what have you got to offer us? Okay, well, about churches, schools, and so on. So communities started developing. And what I'm going to say, cut a long story short, because of time, you end up having something like 800.
Sorry, we can come back next week.
You are going to explain this properly. You have something like 841 secondary schools, let's say, down in the south. This is pre-independence.
Yes, I know.
Compared to nearly about 42 in the north. But the north is vast. The size of Western Europe. So if you have in the down south, I'm talking both in the Yoruba West and also in the East, a vast amount of secondary schools, but in those days quite rare. They were able, therefore, to produce those who can write, who can therefore do administration for the British government, which were needed in the north. So therefore, they went up north to run the trade, the post offices, and all the things. Now, you mentioned the word Sabongari before. For the benefit of the listeners, Sabongari is a place where if you arrive in the north, because you're not a Muslim, they will not allow you to live inside their walled city. You lived outside the walled city because visitors' quarters called Sabongari. Now, Sabongari therefore occupied by those who came from the southern part. And in the Sabongari, they were called privileged pariahs because they were actually doing the work and getting money from the Europe, in other words, they were earning salaries,
sending their servants of colonialism in effect.
So they're benefiting, they're having cars, having shops. Meanwhile, the indigenous people were say, hang on, they've come to our land and they're taking over our jobs. You can imagine where this is going. So they began to restrict them. You're not allowed to own, lands. If you do, we'll rescind it. And there's so much so that they said, if we don't take any plan to stem this flow, we're going to be swamped. So their premier said,
must be related to Margaret Thatcher.
The jobs, well, he was knighted. So he said the jobs has to be a northerner first. So you have people from the south who go to the north to try and run the whole country in the north. And if the northerners who were administering the northern part of Nigeria as a separate entity on behalf of the British via what they call the native administration, they can only appoint you if you're a northerner. So they call it northerner first. So if you have any of theirs who has qualified, he gets the job. If you're then a foreigner, someone, an expat, that's the exact word, an expat, someone from outside Nigeria will get the job number 2, and any other part of Nigeria, we get 3 before an Igbo person from the east gets the job, because you think the Igbos, all you have to do is put them in a job, and before you know it, they're taking over. So there was this enmity about those who went off from the southern part to the northern part to help to develop what was then the Nigerian Federation.
So I want to ask another question because I know that in the making of the civil war, that's important. The officer class in the Nigerian army was also was also substantially from the south and particularly Igbo. As the place became independent.
I'm building the civilians, and then we bring the army.
All right. Okay.
So the civilians were in, if you like, most of the people who went up north to set up their own motor, spare parts business. They were appeared to be flourishing, and as a result, they attracted more people from their own part the country. So much so there was an approach when all the killing started, in the tune of between 1.8 to 2 million people outside the eastern part of Nigeria that had to run back to their own part. So there's a huge number, but it's really dwarfs into insignificance when you compare to the population in the north. But what was then happening was Nigeria, because of the people in the south who were pushing for independence, the northerners said, no, we're not ready for independence. So there was a mismatch whereby a whole country like Nigeria that could have become independent earlier were being dragged back because people in the north, because of their own way of seeing things or doing things, they weren't training enough people from the northern part who would then administer that part. So they felt they'd be disadvantaged if they had independence earlier. So much so that Nnamdi Azikiwe mentioned
independence means southern rule, just as in the Caribbean, Mr. Bustamante said independence means brown man rule.
There you go. So they didn't want to replace the British colonialism with southern colonialism. Okay, so that was an issue for them in the big time. So the Nigerians were trying to get the British to leave so they can begin this process of African decolonization. So, and there were people like Nnamdi Azikiwe who had Pan-African view. The Pan-African view. So
who
that
was he?
So Nnamdi Azikiwe is from the eastern part, he's an Igbo person. Now, but it's more Hausa. He was actually born in the north. In 1904. So he was born there, a place called Zenguri. So because his father was a clerk and so on, so he was born up there. And he realized that very, very early that in order for Africans to be emancipated, you have to be well educated to confront
in the
British.
Western way.
In the Western way, to confront the British. So he, along with his friends, stowed away the ship. They were going to America. They didn't care. So one of his friends became seasick, and they were told that you better throw them overboard, so that otherwise they decided no, they're going to disembark in Accra in Ghana. When they were chopped off the boat. So, and then he started to work as a laborer, and the message got him that his father and his parents that he ran away. He's now living in Ghana. So then he was brought back, and his father said, "Here's my pension money. Let's do this properly. Go to America." So he went to America. He worked as a boxer at the coal mine. Trained himself, Lincoln University, got a master's degree in the 30s. Now, this is unusual. And at one stage in his quest to help Africa free, he actually was lying before a train line to kill himself. He was fed up with the whole thing. But someone rescued him. He managed to get his head together and went back to Africa. Now, at that time in the 30s, he has a master's degree. It was very, very strange. So he started by going to media and popularizing the need to free the African mind. So the idea is to restore the dignity of black man. So he was in the forefront.
Was he influenced by Garvey in any way?
Yes, he had Garvey's interest that had to hold Africa unite together. So the reason why he's significant in this discussion is because he was the one leading, along with others, to try and free Nigeria from British colonialism.
By the way, he has an autobiography just called Z.I.K.
Yes, called Zik.
That people should find and read.
Excellent. Z.I.K. is an abbreviation of Nnamdi Azikiwe. He changed his name from Benjamin to Nnamdi because he wanted to represent his country in an Olympics by himself. He was a boxer, he's a sprinter, he's a runner, he's a footballer, he's everything. He's a proper athlete. And they said, no, you can't represent your country. You haven't got a country. So he was so angry. So he decided he's no longer going to be called Benjamin. From now on, his name is Nnamdi.
which is, by the way, the name of the current leader of IPOB, called Nnamdi. So if you like, this is the first Nnamdi.
We gave the number one.
Nnamdi one. So Nnamdi Azikiwe was therefore, along with other members in Nigeria called Awolowo on the west, they were trying to unite.
Who also has an autobiography.
We're coming back. We come back. So they were trying to set the Nigerian people free from colonialism. The problem was the methodology. Mix water and oil not mixing meant some parts of the country weren't ready. The British told the Azikiwe, because he was one of the prime agitators, there are three parts then to Nigeria then, the northern, the eastern, and the western at that time. We're talking the 50s. The British told him, if two of you out of three want independence, we will give it to you. So Nigeria could have been independent before Ghana. Nnamdi Azikiwe, having been to America, thinking Pan-African, it says, and we're United States of Africa. So if two of us, the East is ready, the West is ready, I'm talking Eastern and Western part of Nigeria then, they call them region in those days.
Yes, they did.
These guys are ready, but the North is not ready. We will wait for them. And the North said, we'll only come and join you guys if you give us 50% of the vote. That's going to be. So they were rigging from the beginning, setting the pace to say, we could only join this independent movement if you give us 50% of the vote. So, and then the remaining 50, of course, going to be shared between East and West. So you can imagine a federation where preponderantly one side has more majority. So
did they have the population base, or was that a lie?
Now the population is interesting. If you look at the whole of West Africa, there's only one part in that West African where more people seem to live in the north in Nigeria than in the west. And so than in the southern part where it's more populated. And also if you look at population density, it's more on the eastern part, but now using satellite imagery. Outside the Nile Valley, there are no more greater population density than the eastern part of Nigeria. So they believe that the population census was rigged to give the impression there are more people living in the north than in the south, where there are a huge number of people. So the population...
There's all kinds of problems with that census, isn't it? Because the north, even though it wanted to claim population preponderance, big numeric numbers, they didn't want the women counted, because they're in... You're not supposed to
You can't go inside somebody's house and count the women. It's not done.
So we don't know how they arrived at these numbers at all, because there's all kinds of problems with I remember that.
So they knew the population census was rigged. In fact, when Nigeria became independent, I believe 1962-63, there's another recount. And there was all sorts of figures churned out, so much so that made the Igbos vulnerable, because the person ruling the Igbo part of the eastern part of Nigeria said they didn't believe the census result from the north. His name is Dr. Opara. So he became an enemy of the north, because the north said, we have more population, what's your problem? So they were already fighting, because the reason why they're fighting about population is that the greater your number, the more you share the cake. It's a federal thing. So going back to why the war came, so you therefore have a huge number gone up to the north to help develop Nigeria, but they began to have resentment because their presence in the north, first of all, they're not Muslim. Secondly, they appear to be more, if you like,
enterprising,
and from the other people, they appear to be more aggressive because they're taking over our jobs, which they are not qualified to do in the first place. But rather than allow them as Nigerians, they wanted other people outside Nigeria to have the job rather than them. So there was, if you look at the answers of the parliamentary debate in the northern part of Nigeria, it's all about how to get rid of the Igbos. This was in the 40s and the 50s. So that was really the genesis of the war we're coming to, because there was an inbuilt discussion about how do we deal with the Igbos? Well, don't give them stores, don't give them land, don't give them, make sure that they're not in position of authority. The position of authority in the north was ruled by the northern native authority. So you can't even, so they were able to start plotting and planning how to contain the Igbos who are living in Sabon Garis. Now, you mentioned the military.
Yes.
So the goings on, so Nigeria managed, to get its independence in 1960. I'm not sure if I'm going too quickly.
No.
So Nigeria managed to get its independence in 1960 after the delay and the dragging of the fleet from the north.
Yes.
So the Nnamdi Azikiwe and the people who are trying to get Nigeria freed from colonial Britain through boycotting, through basically they used superior argument. There wasn't any fighting or killing like in the Kenya scenario. The Nnamdi Azikiwe, with all his knowledge and so on, was able to put together ideas that Nigerians are ready to rule themselves. They have the capacity. In fact, they got everything going for them. They had intellect. They had enough people who were intelligent enough to come to UK and argue their own independence.
Yes.
They were just being held back by a group because they wanted to manipulate them. Anyway, to cut that long story short, it just so happens that when independence was coming, the Britain was, in the meanwhile, building up the north. Yes, making sure when you hand over this independence, you're giving it to the people who can do business with you. So that mentality is that rather than give it to the people who are able to run the ship, that was Nigeria, we give it to some people who are our friends, who will listen to whatever we say. So the problem with the black man is that you need to be able.
But in the beginning you said it was the South. Yeah.
Yes.
That was the friend of the Britons because they accepted schools and religion. Yeah, but now you're saying it's
please repeat that.
I said, earlier you're saying that it was the South that was a friend of the British because they accepted school and religion.
No, not friends.
Not friends.
Not friends.
They grabbed what the
West had
to offer because it's to their own advantage. So they were the ones who building schools in their own parts, generating enough people who can read to run post office and schools, and therefore they weren't really British friends. This word Boko Haram, I'll touch on it now because it's relevant. Sorry, go on. I'll explain why.
I hope you won't touch on that.
I wouldn't touch on it. This book.
No.
I will explain. Please, let me explain why. This thing, Boko Haram, which means Western education is forbidden, is coined by when at the earliest stage these people began to show promise. When they read and understand the way the Western world is put together, they became a danger to the West because that's become education for them is dangerous. You understand? So educating the people from the east and from the west part of Nigeria became some sort of a challenge to the British authorities. So not that they liked them, so the British began to suspect them as if we give this power to them to run the country, this country would take off.
Militant anti-colonialism was based on the leadership from the south. That's the point he's making. Whereas in the north, the entity that they had set up there was run by, very generally speaking, backward Muslim politicians who were not anti-Western, who were in bed with the West. It's like they set up a neo-colony in the north of Nigeria to help them run the whole of Nigeria. And so in that sense, the leadership in the north were their friends. I think that's what the brothers
That's right. They played golf with them. They played polo with them and so on. They're real friends of them.
They had horse culture and polo fitted in and all of that. They're very comfortable up there in a way that they weren't in the south.
They don't want to advance the people.
Yeah, that's right.
So the eastern and the western people appear to be more aggressive because in the west they had the first television, enterprise in the whole of Africa. They have free education. With all this therefore became a danger to the colonial master because you can't have these Africans being educated. So what I'm saying, at independence, the Nigerian setting at independence, there were more promise, because of the educated quality in Nigerian compared to other countries outside Nigeria. But what backfired was they were literally held back by the people who rather had the British ruling them than their fellow black people from the southern part being in charge of what was left behind by the British.
Setting up.
So when this dragging of feet was happening, the people who were given the power, therefore by the British, this is very important. because you're handing independence. They knew independence would come to Africa anyway. Ghana has already become independent. Nigeria is the biggest, most populous part of Africa. Now needs its own independence. And they have a groundswell of knowledge, ability. You can't hold them down forever. So the Brits being the Brits know is inevitable. Why don't we give this power to the people who we can still talk to, who we can still manipulate, who can still, in a way, becomes a flag independence. We give you independence, but we're still running everything remotely from London. That's really the danger. So the people who then saw through all this, because when the paper independence was handed over to the North, they wanted to run things in a way that wasn't progressive enough. So the young military hotheads, this is where they come in and say, why is Nigeria so corrupt? The politicians, we're giving you the opportunity to become independent, but rather than advancing your people, you're running the country to the ground. You have elections, you rig it. People, there's a phrase that says, men became pregnant overnight. You know those agbada we wear in Nigeria, those big gown, they put stuff all your ballot box paper in there and you go and drop it. So paper were being announced, this is the first post-independent election. The first one, they say it was rigged, but we move on. They now become independent. Then the first post-independent election, they began to rig elections. This caused a lot of hassle in the western part of Nigeria, which led to what we call Wild West. People were having acid poured on them. They are being killed because they belong to one political organization and not the other. So Awolowo himself was imprisoned. So there's chaos going on within.
And there was a new group called the Action Group. I seem to remember.
They weren't new. The Action Group was based in the West. They wanted things to move fast. The more educated, in fact, they started, the education came to them first. They had the premier in the West. So they had people who were highly trained, and they're not going to be pushed around by what you know. So people like
by the backward people from the North.
Well, I won't use the word backward. I think we need to get this right. People who think they're backward, it's just that they're denied opportunity to go to school. They're Africans like you and I.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you give them the opportunity to go to school, they will not be backward. It's like if you deny them education, and then you tell them that they're backward, that annoys me. Because open the opportunity for them, and you see they will also develop.
I wasn't expressing my own view. I was expressing the view that I think the Westerners took of the North, of the Northern people. And the explanation that you give is, of course, perfectly correct. One other little point. I think it's very important that we, there are two inaccuracies. One is that the Sudan is actually bigger than Nigeria, one, and two, that it became independent before Ghana, accepting that we don't recognize it because we think of it as an Arab country. But the first black African country to get independence in the post-war period was actually Sudan, 1 year before Nigeria, 1 year before Ghana.
Okay, so Sudan has had its independence, but it was also rigged. It had the Muslim North and the Eastern.
And that's why we don't count. South. That's why we don't count it, because we regard it as Arab. In fact, it's not Arab at all. It's black people, either mixed race black people in the North call themselves Arab, and Africans like you and me not mixed at all in the South, but they're always there. And so it get called Arab, but not Arab. Apart from the language in the North, there's nothing Arabic about it.
So when the first wave of independence started, Sudan, then Ghana, there were people who were Pan-Africanists, like Kwame Nkrumah. So your famous name, Kwame, Nkrumah. He wanted the whole Africa to be one country, one army. Well, in fact, he married an Egyptian. Right, so people like Kwame Nkrumah, who was under the tutelage of Nnamdi Azikiwe, Azikiwe helped, and so on. So all these people like Julius Nyerere, Jomo Kenyatta, all these guys, that Zambian guy Kenneth Kaunda, they're all Pan-Africanists. But what was then happening in Nigeria, especially after the Congo uprising, scenario because Patrice Lumumba, they tried to divide the country and so on. The Nigerian soldiers, the officers, went there and tried to help as part of the UN delegation to try and stem the what was going on. So when they returned, they said to themselves, we can't have Nigeria, mess up. We South Africa is going to need us, and other African countries, which Kwame Nkrumah said, Ghana is free today, but it's not free really until the whole of Africa is free. So that sort of thinking was in the mindset of the earlier leaders. What then happened was the young hotheads, if you call them hotheads, the officer class, the young officer class, because the senior officers were part of the establishment. They're not going to do any coup. The young officers who have been outside Nigeria, looking at surveying what's happening in Africa. We need to move forward, guys. What's happening here? So they decided the way Nigeria was going, with all the turmoil going in the West I mentioned earlier, and all the instability built into the Nigerian independence, and also forever in perpetuity, the Northern nobody else is ever going to rule Nigeria except from the North.
Because they have the numbers.
They had the numbers.
Allegedly.
I said they make us believe. They had the numbers, and they had everything that was in Nigeria was sited in North. So people had to go up there to do their factories and work and so on. So following, if you like, Nigeria sliding into corrupt, failed politicians. So I mentioned those important politicians earlier on. They had a different vision. But the actual people running the new independent country became corrupt. That we're saying, what's going on here? We're supposed to be independent, but you're dragging us backwards. So they became ostentatious, they're flaunting their money and so on. So the military stepped in and said, enough is enough. They plotted.
That's the first coup.
They did. I think there were other coups in, is it Mali or Chad or something?
No, just in Nigeria.
So the first Nigerian coup, 1966, January. So they set up a scenario whereby they wanted to get rid of the politicians. So unfortunately, they killed the prime minister, who, of course, from the north.
Sir Tafawa Balewa.
Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. He was from the north. They killed.
And he's the emir, so he's not only the political leader, but he's in a way the religious leader of the north.
Well, let me explain that. There are two people. One is the Tafawa Balewa, who is the prime minister of Nigeria. He's not the Muslim guy. The Muslim guy is called Saduana of Sokoto, who's Bello. Bello was the guy. So Bello is like the spiritual leader. Amadou Bello. He's the one who says, if you get a job, it's the northern first. So he was, in a way, running the whole country by proxy, as it were. So the military killed him, which is, if you like a big headache. So the military, young hotheads, they killed him. They killed the prime minister. They killed, I think, a senior northern soldier. Okay, and then they killed the finance minister, someone who's from the west. No, he's from Okotiebo, I think is from the Midwest. They killed Akintola, who's from the west, but the person from the east, called Opara, was not killed. And they say, hang on, wait, what's going on here? You killed all the other people, and you didn't kill the guy from the east. The guy from the east said he heard there was going to be a coup, according to the
ran away,
and they ran away because Archbishop Macarius was visiting him. Macarius is a visiting dignitary
from Greece,
Cyprus. So it's Cypriot Greek, Greek Cypriot. So he was visiting his part of Nigeria. So Opera went and ran into where he was staying. So if the military were coming after him, they had to create an international scene. So the military surrounded him, but because the coup failed, those military who were surrounding the Archbishop Macarius were told to stand down. So they didn't kill him or the Eastern Premier. So the story then filtered in that the coup was stopped in the Lagos by the military officer senior to the junior officers. His name, of course, is Agi Urensi. He happened to be from the east. A guy called Ojukwu was also in the north, and he managed to contain the coup over there. And they negotiated the coup plotters to allow Nigerian military to take over the temporary running of the country, because now the civilians, elected civilians, are now being, most of them killed, apart from the Eastern Premier. So what then emerged was a coup which was designed to try and make Nigeria stable. Remember, the West was unstable. The elections were no longer credible. Wole Soyinka, in fact, he went and he put a mask on and tried to say that the coup, put a mask on to say that elections were fraud. He went to the radio broadcast like this and said this nonsense about having an election which was rigged was not acceptable to the West. So that led to a real turmoil, which the military stepped in to try and calm. When the coup occurred, the whole country breathed a huge sigh of relief and said, wow, we now got a country. And all the corrupt politicians started hiding. Some of them started declaring how much they've stolen. The North was celebrating, the East was celebrating, the West celebrating, and said, at last, we now have a country. But the problem then was the British, it's not the way it was designed. You can't have somebody from the East running the country, because it's no longer the plan. So it was the British BBC that first said, this is now beginning to look like an Igbo coup. Now, so that's an incendiary thing to say. For anyone who's in the broadcasting, if you say it's now beginning to look like an Igbo coup, some people latched onto it. Because if it's now an Igbo coup, and Igbos are already becoming what we call privileged pariah in the North, you can see the signal begin to build up to get rid of the Igbos, because they've now taken over our jobs and are now ruling us instead of Abuba Tafa Belewa. You can understand where this was going. So before, as a result of that coup, there was a planned counter coup. And in order to run the country, before we come to plan counter coup, in order to run the country, the person who found himself at the head of state was the head of the military, who happened to have gone to Congo as a UN delegate and so on. So he was now ruling Nigeria as
what's his name?
Aguiyi Ironsi, Major General Aguiyi Ironsi. So he is now ruling Nigeria as a military, and each region he appointed military officers to administer the regions, because the civilians are now waiting to what to do, hand power back. For that to happen, he made decrees and said, this is the rule we're going to run this by, unify the country. You can't unify a country which is all federal. And the people in the North said, no, we don't want to join. What's going on? We don't want to be part of the country. We are a Northern State Federation. You have your Western Federation and Eastern Federation. So there was an issue now about how do we force people in Nigeria to work as one. So the decree was 34. They used this as an excuse, as it's actually what Nigeria is running now. Nigeria is still a unitary country. It's still a unitary state run from the center. This guy was advocating running in from the center. They rebelled against him and did a counter coup. This counter coup got rid of all the Igbo officers in one night, and then the military with the civilians descended on the Igbo population in the north and started the killing. So this killing started in the killing started around May 66, and so much so that May 29, 66, and July 29, 66, and September 29, 66, systematic dates. Lots and lots of people were killed, ranging between 30 to 50,000, and 2 million returned back to the eastern part. So that's really the beginning of the war. Because when you kill that number of people, we're not just talking about communal killing. You descend anyone who is Igbo in the north, you kill them. Some were running in the train. Some of the people who managed to get into the train were beheaded and the body dumped in the train. Pregnant women had their abdomen ripped out, children killed. So what was happening in 66 was something totally phenomenally different that the African have ever experienced, because like your brother, we're neighbors, and now I'm being killed. So I run away with everything I ever possessed back to if I escaped, I managed to return back to my village. So they have returned to their village now. So by the end of 66, There's nowhere in Nigeria, in the north, even the killing went to the Lagos, the capital. So Chinua Achebe has to escape from Lagos for his life. Someone tried to put the theory, his sword mightier than the pen. It's not actually as funny as it sounds. So he has to, first of all, save his life before he argued whether when they come to shoot him, whether his pen is going to fight against them anyway. So Chinua Achebe escaped and was so disappointed that even in his own capital, he's not safe.
Do our listeners know who Chinua Achebe was?
Well, Chinua Achebe, as you know, is the person who wrote one of the most striking book in African literature about 60 years ago, 1958, when he first published what we call Things Fall Apart. And it's worth reading. So it's the first time an African was reading a book about Africans and how their culture and so on was set up. So when he wrote it, the teacher said, well, this book doesn't have any form. He said, what is form? Like everything good you decide, they always start to talk it down. So he published it, the manuscript, was typed it and sent it to London. And it sat in somebody's office for months and months, and he didn't have a copy. There's no photocopy in 58. And if he has lost that manuscript, there's no way we'll know about Things Fall Apart. So he was appointed to BBC equivalent to Nigeria Broadcasting Service. So when the head of that, who was a white woman, was coming to London, he begged her to go to these publishers, please, go and rescue my manuscript.
What's happening there?
So she returned, stormed into the office and said, what's happened to the manuscript? He said, what manuscript? So eventually said, if you don't do anything with the manuscript, I'm going to sue you, blah, blah, blah. And they quickly printed it. That's why we have Things Fall Apart today. So Chinua Achebe is celebrated author.
His next book is called A Man of the People or something, which actually tries to deal with that contemporary situation in Nigeria.
So it's almost prophetic, in the sense that if you read his books, it's cataloging what's happening in Nigeria. Because of those books, they say, the Igbos plotted the coup all along. Because it's so reflective of what's happening in Nigeria. But alas, late Professor Chinua Achebe, he was one of the Biafran ambassadors during the war to explain what's going on. So, where were we? We got to the stage
We're now at the Civil War.
So the Civil War then came as a result of all the killings outside the eastern part of Nigeria. They weren't just killing Igbos, they were killing people with Bibio, people from Efik, all the tribes that make up eastern Nigeria. People. So all the people that make up eastern Nigeria were being killed. So they returned back to their ancestral land. As I said, trains were returning with people missing limbs, beheading. So although the trains had some people who survived, they have horrible stories to tell of what happened to them. So their relatives saw this and they were completely flabbergasted. What can we do? How do we then stay in this country called Nigeria? Because the plan was to get rid of the Igbos. The Yorubas, get rid of the Igbos, and some of my Yoruba friends will say, well, what am I talking about? When the Nigerian soldiers in Yoruba land went from door to door, they were knocking on doors, and when they used the word Toro used to be a tuppence, When you say Toro, the way you speak it, your accent will give away whether you are Yoruba or Igbo. And you got killed. Those were dubbed soul brothers, so they know where the Igbos lived and so in Lagos. So for the outside, they say, well, how can you know who's Igbo and who's? You all look alike. Some of us have tribal markings. That's another issue. But the way we had shops and the way they behave, they can tell who's Igbo. So anyway, cut a long story short again, the Igbos were killed outside their own tribal zone, their own tribal land. When they returned part, they didn't know what it is they ought to do. There was a lot of anger in the eastern part of Nigeria. We now need to find a solution. The solution was, if we stay as we are, that's fine. There's no problem. The Nigerian will tell us what to do. The rest of the Nigeria will tell us what they don't want us to do. Do we go back and get killed again? Remember the 66, although there are three waves of killing. The Igbos have been killed, or the Easterners have been killed in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria, in 1945. They've been killed in 1953. So this killing, the third time it's happened, the Biafrans or the Igbos or the Easterners felt enough was enough.
What prompted those earlier killings, which I wasn't aware of? The 45 and whatever other.
The 45 was around the war. There was a sort of strike around Jos area, the tin mines. So because the Igbos were leading the boycotting, the British thought it'd be a good idea just to let them suffer a bit, so they were massacred as a result of that.
So the British
were in charge then.
British instituted massacre.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not only
and
that,
on the second occasion?
The second occasion in 53 was about, we want independence from Nigeria, but the North said we're not ready. And at the reception we had in Ibadan, which is the western part of Nigeria, insulted our delegates. So when they got back to the North, they turned on the Igbos and killed them. So and the British investigated the killing and said, well, the reason for this killing is still in the ground and it may happen again. And nobody did anything about it. So the Igbos, therefore, the Biafrans, therefore, have a history of what has been happening to them over these years. So it was therefore this killing in 66 that literally broke the camel's back. Now, they decided, what do we do? Let's talk constitutional reform then to see how we can live together. And then it drifted into coming back to Ghana, a place called Aburi, where the representative from the eastern part of Nigeria, the western part, the northern part, the Midwestern then, and Lagos, they all got together, they sat down with the new military governor. They've killed the Igbo head of state, now Gowon is in charge. So they went to Ghana to say, how do we live together as citizens of one country? The conclusion was that, those people we chased out of Nigeria, those who are government employed, we need to pay them their salaries. They left from May, June, July. They haven't had any salary since January now. They're starving. We need to somehow help them. So the second, so one is therefore looking after those who have been displaced. There were 2 million, because the eastern region's government cannot cope with that sort of deluge of refugees. But the other thing that sustained them was this African way of doing things. Their own people, everyone had a village to go to, a relative, so they absorbed them. The extended family system was what saved those 2 million people. Okay, unlike the current Rohingya. It's exactly so. The Rohingya were being chased out from Burma. They would go back. The UN need to step in and feed them. But in the Biafran scenario, over 2 million people were absorbed by the Easterners. Nobody stepped in to do anything. So they were nursing that wound. They're now asking Nigeria, how do we live together? So they went to Ghana, Aburi Ghana, to try and find out the way to work out something. So it was decided the best thing is to have those 4 regions stay where they are and move apart slightly. They call confederation. So any decision has to be made by these 4 people leading the regions, and it's got to have concurrence. We've got to agree to it. And by the way, we're not going to use force to settle Nigerian crisis anymore. We're not going to kill each other anymore. Let's put force aside. They all signed this communique. Ankara, who was the general ruling Ghana at the time, by that time Nkrumah has been deposed. So Ankara was the one who chaired this meeting. The Nigerian delegation said, all right, why don't we put this communique to the African Union equivalent, which was the OAU. So that they have a copy of
63.
So that we have a copy of this discussion. So no, it's an internal matter. We are Nigerians. We can deal with this problem. So let's keep it to ourselves. But we have a written agreement which we both signed, and so on. So they went away from Ghana very, very pleased that the Africans, for the first time, were sat down, were able to resolve all their issues and decide the way going forward. But all the agreements were made. Within a few days of returning from Aburi, the Nigerian side started saying, no, we do not agree to this. We say, hang on. The head of state, the head of Eastern Part said, we had this on gramophone record. It's all recorded. Here's the sheet. Your secretary signed it, my secretary. They were actually eating from the same spoon, the same plate. And if you look at the pictures of Aburi, they all agreed it was amicably settled. But then Nigeria decided to start pulling away, from the agreement, start
the
changing.
Government of Nigeria.
The government of Nigeria then started trying to go back, and we believe they may have been influenced by the Western input when they now read the script of how these Africans can live together. So the Western, in my opinion, can never run their country unless you have conflict in Africa, because that fuels their while you're busy killing each other, they cart away your goods, isn't it? And they give you weapons to kill each other. So it helps them. So if Aburi was allowed, there would have been no Biafra war. There would have been, in fact, no mention of Biafra as a country. So the Nigeria would have remained the same. And when the wound of all the killings, when that has settled, it's possible Nigeria could have remained one country. But because Aburi was reneged, they did not carry out the decision, because it's like the final straw. It was like, we have been killed numerous occasions, and we now want somehow to forge a way of going forward. But you ignored all the decisions we made. You ignored everything, and you then put inside this communique, we can declare a state of emergency at any time. So the Easterners were scratching their head. But Ojukwu, you went and so they wrote a shirt, on Aburi we stand. Yeah, it's like the last straw. On Aburi we stand. So because that was reneged on, the Biafrans said, look, because that was so on the the accord was signed in January, 4th and 5th of January 1967. So Ojukwu said to the people, we just have to wait for Gowon to come to us and agree with what we said. So Gowon started changing.
You haven't told the listeners who Ojukwu was.
Sorry. Ojukwu was the, Emeka Ojukwu was the person who was appointed after the coup, the first coup, which got rid of the Nigerian politicians in what they call the First Republic. He was appointed to administer the Eastern region.
And he's a soldier in the Nigerian army.
Yes, he was a Nigerian soldier, first Oxford trained, first Oxford graduate Nigerian military.
Yeah, general.
General. So he wasn't a general then, he was a lieutenant colonel.
All right.
When he was ruling, so he was appointed to administer Eastern Nigeria. Okay? Just as somebody was called Ejo was appointed to administer Western Nigeria, Adebayo was appointed to administer Western Nigeria, and Katsina was appointed to look after Northern Nigeria. And then you had the overall supreme commander called Agi Ironsi. So when Agi Ironsi was removed, Gowon stepped into his place. When they went to Aburi, they didn't even know where Agi Ironsi was. They haven't accepted that he was dead. So Ojukwu said, well, first we have to decide that he's dead, he's not dead. So therefore, we cannot recognize Gowon as the supreme head until we decided. So it was in Aburi that they declared that the supreme commander has died. And the Ojukwu said, okay, if that's the case, we lower the flag as military and move on. The king is dead, long live the king, and so on. So that concept was put in place. So Gowon was going to be recognized as the overall head of the Nigerian. But he reneged, even though he's junior to Ojukwu and he's not junior to other people like Adebayo from the West. So strictly speaking, there was an indisciplined Nigerian army. Because the next person after Major General Gowon, after General Agi Ironsi was killed, it should have been a Yoruba person who stepped into the breach to be the Nigerian army, called Ogundipe. But he was not allowed to be the head of Nigerian military because the Northerners didn't like the idea of anybody else ruling the country other than they.
Tomorrow is a lockdown in Biafra land, and I wanted to repeat this tonight, that nobody can tell you anything because we know how they operate. They may now come before the day breaks and tell you one story. The lockdown in Biafra land tomorrow remains as already announced. And I am certain that Biafrans who have answered the clarion call, who have shown time and time again that they are in total support of this very great movement and that they are loyal to Onyenumazi Nnamdi Kanu, I am convinced and sure that we will do what we are known for, that the whole of Biafra land will be locked down 100%. We also commend our women, the IPOB women that have been protesting since yesterday in the United Kingdom, London to be precise. Our IPOB women, I want to commend you for all that you have been doing since yesterday and today. And of course, tomorrow, I suppose, is the last day of the protest of our women in London. And tomorrow being the last day, I am directing every IPOB family member in the UK to come out tomorrow and ensure, come out tomorrow in the United Kingdom, please. Come out tomorrow in London and join our women to drive home our demand, which is that the leader of this great movement, Onyenumazi Nnamdi Kanu, must be released unconditionally because he has committed no crime. We must drive home our demand that the British authorities must know that a citizen of the United Kingdom, a citizen of Britain, a subject of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, has been incarcerated, has been extraordinarily rendition for months and counting. The Biafran women are bringing this to the attention of the British authorities in case they have forgotten. And our demand and the demand of our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, the Biafran, the IPOB women worldwide in UK, our demand and their demand is simple. Release the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Onyenumazi Nnamdi Kanu, unconditionally. And also they are telling the United Kingdom to do what is right and ensure that their citizen is released and that the torture that he is undergoing is stopped forthwith. This, like I said, is an emergency broadcast because it has become imperative that I speak to great Biafran, that I make the world to know and to understand that there is a plan by the establishment, the Nigerian establishment. It is imperative that I let the world to know that there is a covert plan by the Fulani Caliphate and their collaborators, of course, who have found themselves in our midst, those of them who call themselves politicians, those who they are using to perpetrate their evil in our land. It has become imperative that I let the world know that all the atrocities that is going on, which has climaxed in the murder, in the cold-blooded killing of Dr. P.K. Akunyele, is the handwork of the Nigerian authorities through their security apparatus, because they want to create an environment that will give them an opportunity to see if there is a crime, they will hang on our leader, Onyenumazi Nnamdi Kanu. And I'm telling them that they are late on arrival because we are many miles ahead of them. Our intelligence unit, they, like Oyendo always tell you, they are one of the best in the world. And we are receiving credible evidence, credible information, credible data and facts that they are behind what is happening in our land. And therefore, like I said, those they are using to commit this crime, we will find you. We, the IPOB, will find you, because we cannot allow you to create such an environment in our land. We cannot allow you to manufacture or to go and start looking for crime that you will hang on Onyendu, our leader. We will not allow that to happen. And of course, Chukwu Abiyama will not allow that to happen. I want to thank you all for listening this very evening. And I want to commend all of you into the hand of Elohim Chukwu Abiyama Kumiyanine. And of course, commit